folks. Welcome in and welcome back. It is the 901 Soccer Podcast, and I am your host, Lawrence Dockery. This is a 2024 season preview edition of the 901 Soccer Podcast here on Bluff City Media. And as always, it may have been a while since I last talked to you, but as always, you can find me on Twitter at LDoc93. Find the 901 Soccer Podcast on Twitter at 901 Soccer Pod, and Bluff City Media on Twitter at Bluff City_media. And you can find us on Facebook as well. Search 901 Soccer, we'll pop right up. Search Bluff City Media, we'll pop right up. A lot of soccer stuff coming here on the 901 Soccer Podcast, but Bluff City Media's got you covered on all things Memphis sports, including Grizzlies, Tiger basketball, Tiger football, other, Tiger sports. Could be women's basketball, could be the baseball team. They're doing okay to start the season, So we got a lot going on at Bluff City Media. It's the place to be for Memphis sports coverage. And if you want Memphis 901 SC coverage, you've come to the right spot. So here we are. It is the 2024 season preview edition of the show. Like I said earlier, it may have been a minute, probably since the 2023 season recap. But we're back now. The season is ramping up. There's a lot of good stuff to get into. So let's just go right ahead and do that, shall we? We have a lot on tap tonight, and hopefully we'll try to keep it, we won't keep you here all day. We got a lot to get into. We've got just a very brief, we already did the season recap back at the end of December. But we do, to talk about this year, you do have to talk a little bit about last year. So that's why we're going to talk just a little bit about last year. And then we're going to talk about the offseason. Because I've said it on Twitter, I've said it on Facebook, I've said it in person to whoever wanted to hear it. I've said it before, I will say it again, and I will continue to say it probably until Saturday, because that's when the season starts. And at that point, it is no longer the offseason. But this has been far and away the best offseason Memphis 901 FC has ever had. And it's not just there's been a lot of things that they have done really well. And we're going to get into all of those tonight. It's new front office hires. It's new player signings. It's players that came from last year. It's the messaging. It's getting out into the community. It's better marketing. It's a new home jersey. It's so much stuff. Like everything that you and I and all of the fans have sat here and begged and screamed and pleaded and on a bended knee going, please just do something. Check. If you had handed them a checklist and said, please do all of this, I can't think of anything on the box that's not checked. I think probably the only thing that isn't checked is a stadium, and that is somewhat out of their hands. I'm sure they're working quite diligently on options now that the city of Memphis has officially told them to screw off. Not so much the city of Memphis, but other players involved in that whole situation. But I personally can't think of very many ways how this could have been a better offseason. Let's just get into it. So they hired a new COO. And this is not a replacement position. This isn't somebody got fired to make room for this guy. No, this is a new position that they created. And they hired a guy named Jay Mims, who most recently had been at Union Omaha down in USL League One. He is a native Memphian. And I actually, funnily enough, and we'll talk about this more in a little bit, when Memphis 9 FC had their preseason game against the U of M, I was actually talking to Jay's brother. And just a fun, quick little aside here, I don't know how many years ago, it's been several. It might have been pre-COVID, but it might have been post-COVID. I don't remember. I'd have to go back and look at my referee spreadsheet. I was on a game at Mike Rose that Jay's brother, Wes, was coaching. And they were playing, it was a U18 boys game. They were playing a U14 team from Columbus, Ohio. And this team flew here, which is crazy. Like to think about flying to travel for a youth soccer tournament. I guess I'm just used to all of the teams that come to these events being from like Nashville or Birmingham or somewhere in Mississippi or somewhere in Arkansas or St. Louis. This team flew here from Columbus, Ohio, and they killed everybody. I mean, if you're flying U14, if you're flying 13-year-old kids from Ohio to Memphis and playing them 4 age groups up, you're not coming here to not beat everybody by 10 goals. And they were playing Jay's brother's team, and at one point, I don't remember if there was a dead. I think it might have been. Anyway, at one point, I don't remember if it was during a stoppage in play or if it was during the run of play. one of the players from Wes's brother's team jumped up off the bench and ran out and just tackled some kid. Not soccer tackled, but football tackled. Just like wrap up, drive, like John Gruden in the old QB camp. Like you gotta learn how to tackle. Actually, I come to think of it, I think that might have been a parody of some sort. But anyway, wrap up, drive, like, and I was like, "Oh, we have lost cabin pressure on this game." And that was kind of a funny little memory trigger meeting with Jay's brother. But anyway, Jay Mims, native Memphian, and I think right from the jump. If you haven't read it yet, by the way, I had a very nice interview with Jay several weeks ago, and I have a write-up of it over at Bluff City Media. If you wanted to check that out, we touched on a lot of different things. Benefits for season ticket holders, stuff we're going to talk about tonight. No, don't worry about that. But a lot of stuff. The biggest thing is, and it's the headline of the story. As a matter of fact, it's just all about getting to tell our story. Is the way that he put it, and I don't think I could have put it any better. They're already in the short time that he's been here, it is already noticeably improved from what it had been in the past. And that is a very good thing. It's something that we have all, for quite some time, been asking for, and they're doing it. And if we're going to ask for it and they're going to do it, I think they deserve to be applauded for that. I've been very hard on this organization in the past, as I'm sure they're aware of, as I'm sure you're aware of. But when you do bad stuff, I say mean things, and when you do good stuff, I say nice things. And they have done a ton of good stuff, so I am saying nice things. That's just how my brain operates. But I always try to hold myself to the standard of, if I'm gonna moan and complain when things aren't going well, I better, on the flip side of that coin, is when they start doing the good stuff, sit here and point out and applaud them for doing the good stuff. So here we are. They've done, like I said, excuse me, I don't know if this could have been a better offseason for 901 FC. I really don't. Not just in terms like the player signings, the fact that they got ahead. And how many times in years past have we seen them wait until 2 weeks before the season starts to go, oh, by the way, we got to put a roster together. There was none of that. They announced who was coming back fairly early on. I want to say maybe even before Thanksgiving, they announced who all was coming back. And then they started adding players, and they would add one here and they would add one there. And some of them were big names and some of them weren't. And, but they kept this off. Like, I can't say it enough. This off season has been fantastic. Obviously if things go south on the field, then that's a different discussion, but I think this team's going to be really good this year. And they've been good the last couple of years, which brings us to the last couple of seasons. The last season, I should say. They were good last year. I think there were moments at the start of the season, and then they had that midsummer swoon. And I'm very much a prisoner of the moment. When things are going poorly, everybody's terrible. Blow it up. Get rid of everybody. This person needs to go. Go get me this guy, this guy, this guy, this guy, and we're going to do all of this differently. But when things are going well, I'm on cloud nine. Everything's the best. There's no way we're ever losing again. Everybody we've got is the best ever, and so on. And Eric Hasseltine is the radio voice of the Memphis Grizzlies. I had the pleasure of interning with him on his radio show back when he had one. I was right out of high school, so we're talking probably 12, 13 years ago. And his saying is, you never get too high after a win and you never get too low after a loss. And I've tried that. It does not work for me. So that's where I come from. When things aren't going well, just know that's why, because I'm very much a prisoner of the moment. But last season, they started off rough, and I think a lot of us were probably still a little bit bitter, a little bit upset at the fact that Ben Pierman was not retained. And, if based on some conversations I've had this offseason, Coach Glass walked into a very tough spot, despite how good the team had been the previous 2 years, and started off rough. And so already you're not happy with how the last offseason went. So when the next season starts and it doesn't start great, that just kind of adds to that fire. But then they went on a 12-game unbeaten run in league play and won 2 games in the Open Cup and knocked out an MLS team. which that's a different discussion for a different day. I'll get more into that as 901 FC finds out who their Open Cup opponent is. Don't you worry. I have thoughts on MLS's greedy, cowardly, and dastardly decision to try to kill the U.S. Open Cup. But that's not for this show. That's for a different show. So they got to the playoffs again last year. Look, you went 12 games unbeaten, fell apart a little bit, over the summer, and then you picked things back up and closed the season fairly strongly. The season finale against New Mexico notwithstanding. So all in all, nice run in the Open Cup and a third straight playoff appearance. For as new of an organization as Memphis 901 FC is, reflecting on it, I don't think that's anything we should turn our noses up at. So this season, I've gone a little bit out of order on my notes here, and I apologize, but to reiterate, this offseason has been fantastic. And it started with fairly early on announcing who was coming back. And the guys that are coming back, well, we'll get to that in a second. But they brought in Jay Mims, right? And as I've said, he's a native Memphian, was at Union Omaha. This hire got a seal of approval from you wouldn't even think, well, that's kind of random. That's out of left field, but that would carry some weight, is the athletic director at Nebraska, Trev Alberts, said one of the smartest, most competitive people I know. Memphis 901 FC is in great hands. And come to find out that when Jay was coaching, I believe, at Omaha, that's where Trev Alberts was working at the time. So when somebody from outside of when somebody from outside of not just the 901 FC bubble, but outside of the USL bubble, and quite frankly, outside of the soccer bubble, is saying this is a great hire, I'm going to pay attention to that. And the early returns on Jay Mims as the COO is that it's a great hire. I mentioned the piece that I've got up at bluffcitymedia.com. You can go read that. And, he's happy to be back. They've done a lot. There's been a lot more marketing. The benefits for season ticket holders are as good as they've ever been. And I think, let me pull that up. If you're a season ticket holder, you probably already know this, but, after last season, I wrote an attendance piece for Bluff City Media, which you can also go read, about how last year attendance was at the lowest point in team history. And I crowdsourced ideas. How can we fix this? Several people said, look, the benefits for season ticket holders are not good. They appear to have heard your concerns. And it looks to me, granted, I am not a season ticket holder. I'm a media member. But it seems to me that they have addressed those, they've at least attempted to address those concerns. And as far as I can tell, this seems to be an extensive list of benefits for season ticket holders. Concession credit, exclusive scarf, the ability, you got it's like a bring a buddy program or something like that, ticket exchange options, special invitations to exclusive season ticket holder events, one of which was tonight, and we'll talk about that to close out the show. And then, of course, you've got your, right of first refusal, priority options for playoff games, U.S. Open Cup games, midseason exhibitions, should they happen. And apparently that's been all very well received. And so good on them for that. They've been getting out to the schools more. Just right before I interviewed Jay Mims for that piece, they were at Lewisburg before both the boys and girls teams at Lewisburg competed in Mississippi high school playoffs. Unfortunately, I do believe both those teams lost their respective game that night. But we sat and talked about it. We're like, look, there's a lot of soccer on TV this summer. You've got Euro 24 is in Germany. It's going to be on TV during the day. Copa America is here in the U.S. at night. Then you got the Olympics in Paris on TV in late July and early August. And, they are aware of that. They are going to do what they can to try to find a way to capitalize on that. There's talk about doing more like watch parties for when the team is on the road. Like official team sponsored, we're going to this place to watch this game when they're in, who knows, it could be Louisville, could be Birmingham, could be, wherever. And I don't think they had any of those last year. The last one that I remember, And this is just terrible luck. This is one of those situations where they did what we asked them and it backfired tremendously, which is just so frustrating. Is you remember the 2022 season, they went to some brewery somewhere in town, and it was the game where 901FC went to Loudon. It was like a 1 o'clock on a Sunday afternoon, and the game in Loudon got delayed for like 9 hours because of thunderstorms. And so you've got this whole watch party going, and then there's no game to watch because the weather jacked everything up. It's just like, come on, man. That is the game, if you'll recall, where Memphis 901FC went first in the table in the Eastern Conference after that game. Ben Pierman went on local radio and said, teams in first place aren't allowed to take naps. And the following home game was against Atlanta United, too, and which was, I believe, the second or third largest crowd of the season, over 6,000 people that year. So the going first and the watch party, I think, may have played a part in that. But like all of this stuff that people had sent my way in terms of suggestions on how to improve attendance, they're like in my interview, in the 20 minutes that I got to spend talking to Jay Mims, they're aware of it. Like they know what needs to be done, and so far they're doing it, and that should be commended and applauded. And it's something that I will say this. I'll couch it this way, I should say. It's something that needs to be continued. It can't just be once the season starts, it stops. Or, if we don't immediately sell out AutoZone Park with 10,000 people each of these first two home games, well, we tried, it didn't work. It is something that needs to be a season-long thing, and I think they are aware of that. I feel as good about 901FC from a marketing attendance standpoint for this year as I felt probably since they announced Tim Howard was going to play right before the 2020 season. They had a lot of momentum going in that season, and I'll say that. And this is not to make an excuse, because I have been upset with other people for making the same excuse in a variety of walks of life, not just soccer or sports, but business and that sort of thing. People using COVID as an excuse when it's really your own poor decision making. But I think COVID really hit 901FC harder than any sporting organization in town. And so the fact that they're like, I feel as good as I've ever felt about them in terms of marketing, attendance, relevancy within the city sporting conversation. One thing that I have personally, and I know other people have sat there and begged and begged and begged, please show up at these youth tournaments at Mike Rose. Please, please, please do that. They have finally started doing that. This past weekend at Mike Rose was not just the largest tournament of the year, which it was the largest tournament in Mike Rose history. I believe the final number of teams ended up being 284 teams. Lord knows I was out there all weekend refereeing. It was like 2 games on Saturday and like 6 or 7 on Sunday or Saturday. 2 games on Friday, 6 or 7 on Saturday, and then I think 5 or 6 on Sunday. Like it was a lot. My feet still hurt. And if you'll recall, last year, I don't know if I put this out there. I may have just verbally spoken it to several people, but there was, before the playoff game against Louisville, they showed up out there, but I was getting ready to start a game on Field 14, which, if you've been to Mike Rose, you drive into the complex, and the stadium's kind of right here on the right, and some of the fields are right here on the left, and there's this field right here, right by the road. That's Field 14. I was getting ready to start a game on Field 14 on Elopement. I saw them setting up the tent, but it wasn't in front of the stadium. It was like halfway down the stadium where nobody goes, where there's no foot traffic, and it was all shady and dark. And I'm like, well, that's not really going to be the way to get anybody in there. But as long, if they're there all day, people are bound to walk by. Well, they were gone. They set up, and they got there, set up, packed up, and left in the time it took me to get that game done on Field 14. I mean, so they couldn't have been there more than an hour and a half. And I sat there. Then that was before the playoff game against Louisville last year, and I remember thinking, what in the actual hell are we doing here? There was no point. I think they put some flyers on people's windshields. This past weekend, however, that was not the case. They were there almost quite literally from dawn to dusk. I'm always one of the first people there as a referee. I got there at like 7 on Saturday. They weren't in the tent, but they had that tent set up. It was right in front of the fountain, so the placement was much better. They had merchandise. They had like giveaways, stickers, not fake tattoos, temporary tattoos, and all sorts of other stuff. I think you could enter into a drawing to win a 4-top all-you-can-eat table to the season opener on Saturday against Vegas. So like they were out there, and speaking at that event tonight with several people, that went very well. It may have been a closet clean-out situation. All of the old merch by old providers like Nike and Puma, got to get rid of it to get the new Charlie stuff in. But hey, you know what? That's still that Memphis 901 FC logo, and that's still money coming in. That's got my seal of approval, which is not necessarily why you need to necessarily do anything. But if I like it, that means it's probably a pretty good idea. If I don't, say so myself. But they were out there from 8 a.m. till probably 6 p.m. on Saturday. And every time I happened to be on the ref cart driving one way or the other, getting to a game, there were people in that tent. There were people buying stuff. And then on Sunday, they were there like 8 to 12. And, the day wrapped up at like 2. So they were out there. They made their presence known. They got rid of a bunch of merch and got money for it. That's something we have all asked for, and they've done it. And they should be applauded and commended for that. And one of the other things that I think I asked Jay Mims about was, how do you get more coverage from the media? Much as I cover this team, I can't do it all by myself. I have 2 other jobs. I have a regular job, and then I have my refereeing on top of all of this. There's been a lot of extra coverage from the rest of the local media here of 901 FC. And, there have been somebody texted me like a week ago and said there's Channel 24 had a big piece, like a feature story. Kim Clark from Action News 5 just yesterday, I believe, had a big 5-minute thing on the Channel 5 News and on their website and all of that. And she carries a lot of weight in this town, so that was very big. I think we're going to start seeing more coverage from the Commercial Appeal. Jonah Dillon, who is the new Tiger football beat writer over at the Commercial Appeal, I believe either used to work for or used to cover the Hartford Athletic here in the USL. So he is a soccer guy, and he was at a couple of the U of M women's games last year, and he was at the 901 FC preseason game against the U of M men's team this year. He also showed up at Media Day. Channel 3 has been at a number of these. Channel 24 has been at a number of these. John Varlas from the Daily Memphian. And so 901 FC is helping themselves, and the local media is helping 901 FC. And this is the best I've ever seen. I mean, since the Tim Howard game in 2020, like this is just about more than I've ever seen. So this is all positive. This is all good. This is all good news. And I hope and pray that it leads to bigger and better crowds at AutoZone Park. So the next topic of discussion is the roster. And I sort of dug into it a second ago and then realized I was going out of order on my notes, and now we're coming back to it. So you had to keep, a bunch of guys from last year, okay? And the guys that they're bringing back, they brought back Knight Pickering, Luis Fernando, Samuel Carriaga, and Lucas Turchi. They also brought back Emerson Heineman, Bruno Lapa, Carson Von Stieg, Akeem Ward, Aaron Seeger, and Dylan Borsak. And that was the very first moves they made back on November 20th. They did end up also bringing Leston Paul back. And at Media Day, everybody had amazing things to say about Leston Paul. And one of the things that they're doing with Leston Paul is, in addition to him being the team captain, which makes all the sense in the world given that he's an original. He's the last original. He's been here almost quite literally since day one. That in addition to being the team captain, he is going to be taking on additional roles within the organization as part of the coaching staff. He is going to attempt to begin the transition from player to coach. He's still going to be like they made that very, very, very clear at Media Day. Both Caleb and Stephen Glass and Leston all said, look, he's transitioning into a coaching role, but he is still the captain. He is still playing this year. And everybody had amazing things to say about Leston, which makes all the sense in the world. And that's a guy that you want to have. And it kind of goes to the overall, which I couldn't identify it. And then when it was discussed, and like when they brought it up at Media Day, it made sense. But the theme of the roster this year for 901 FC, according to Caleb Patterson Sewell and Stephen Glass, has been like if you guys have ever seen the movie Miracle with Kurt Russell as Herb Brooks, about the U.S. Olympic team that beat the Soviets in the in hockey at the 1980 Miracle on Ice, right? There's his assistant coach walks up and he looks at the roster and he's like, "You're missing half the best players." And Herb Brooks goes, "I'm not looking for the best players. I'm looking for the right ones." That's kind of the vibe that I got, which is to take nothing away from the quality of the players that they signed, because they signed some really good players, and we'll get into that in a second. The overall theme of roster building for the offseason was we're looking for quality character. And this is where I touched on a little bit where Coach Glass walked into a kind of a difficult situation last year. Is there were a lot of, at Media Day, there were some indirect references to, there were probably a lot of players on the roster last year who had no desire to be here. I think one of the quotes, if I'm not mistaken, it was, I should have had it pulled up, but it was something along the lines of, I think it was Stephen Glass who said, you can read the story at Bluff City Media, but it was something along the lines of, people that didn't want to particularly be here last year aren't here anymore. And the overall arching point is that if we called them and we didn't like what they said as far as what they wanted as a professional player and what they, what their impressions of Memphis were, we politely told them, please don't come here. And I think this, and that the fact that was the messaging, the fact that both Stephen Glass and Caleb Patterson Sewell said everybody that we talked to on the phone that we ended up bringing all said they wanted to be here and they wanted to win. And that's great that's where they've gone. It is a little bit frustrating. That's where we are in modern sports, that it's like a big deal if athletes want to win. Look at the state of college football now, and look in the state of professional basketball right now, and quite frankly, top flight European soccer. You can't tell me that a lot of those guys in those sports that I just mentioned care about winning more than they care about other stupid peripheral crap. So for 901 FC to get a bunch of guys who were adamant about wanting to both be here and wanting to win at a high level, that's good news. Everybody wanted to win, and put another feather in the hat of how much better 901 FC has been doing this offseason is they announced that they were bringing back Kyle Murphy, which just by itself would have been fantastic. I mean, he was, until Philip Goodrum broke it in 2021, Kyle Murphy had the record for most goals scored in a season for 901 FC. It felt like, I'll tell you, I'll give you one little funny story. So after a game in 2021, I don't remember which game it was fairly late in the season. They had us, this was when they had us doing post-game availability down on the field, which was kind of cool, but it was also a little bit frustrating because they had the stadium cleanup crew with their leaf blowers in the background, and that made recording really hard to listen to. But you had, I lost my train of thought. What the hell? Oh, Kyle Murphy. So if anybody out there remembers when Ken Jennings was first on Jeopardy and he won something absurd like 89 games in a row on Jeopardy or something like that and won like $10 million. There was one point where, they do, Alex Trebek used to get up there and go, "Hey, you're this person and this is what you do, but here's this goofy thing about you." And then you go to the next person and be like, "Hey, this is what you do for work. How interesting is that?" And then he'd get to Ken Jennings. And, once you're on there for 89 games, there's only so much stuff you can talk about. And Alex Trebek asked him, "Ken, is there anything that you want to ask me?" So there was a game where, because every home game, Kyle Murphy was scoring a goal. So I thought I'd be a funny guy and be like, "Kyle, do you have anything that you want to ask us?" And so that was my lasting memory of Kyle Murphy. So that was going to be a great signing. And then I don't know if it was necessarily out of nowhere. I don't know if it was his plan all along, or if at some point he was just like, "I'm tired. I don't enjoy playing it. I don't know." he retired. We wish all the best to him in retirement. So when that news breaks, you're sitting there going, at the time, that was your marquee signing of the offseason. Now what do you do? 901 FC of old would have kind of been caught with their ass hanging out in the breeze. But that was 901 FC of old. This is new 901 FC. I don't know if we're going to make that catch on or not. But this is new 901 FC, and not 20 minutes after they announced that Kyle Murphy was retiring, they announced the signing of Nico Brett, who is the third leading goal scorer in USL Championship history. You want to talk about give me the bad news first, then give me the good news. That's what that was. And that's just another check mark in the box of how good this offseason has been for 901 FC. Then you finally get to where it's time to play some preseason games. And they had a really good preseason schedule with a lot of variety on it. You're going on the road to two different MLS teams. You're going on the road to two collegiate teams in Memphis, but it's in Memphis, so, really, it's a home game, even if it's on the CBU campus or the U of M campus. And then you're going on the road to an MLS Next Pro team. So you got a good variety. You got games at home. They went on the road to Athens, Georgia, and played Atlanta United, 1-1 draw. They jumped on them within the first 3 minutes, courtesy of Knight Pickering. Then you went to Nashville. Actually, I take that back. I believe it was in between the Atlanta game and the Nashville game. They were supposed to have a game at CBU, and that game was canceled. And speaking with the folks at 901 FC, all I was told is that did not come from their end. So, which was kind of a bummer because I was looking, I'm a weirdo. I keep a spreadsheet of every game that I've covered, every stadium / venue, every state, every country. I'm at like 3 states and 1 country, but I've got a decent number of venues under my belt, I feel like. And I was going to get to add a new one to it at CBU. Unfortunately, that game was canceled for reasons unknown. So I didn't get to do that one. And that would have been another opportunity for the people in Memphis to go see what 901 FC was going to look like. But then they went to Nashville, jumped on them early. Luis Fernando, I believe, got the goal. And then I think the only goal they gave up in that game was Tyler Derrick saved a penalty and the rebound got tapped in, which, that's both great and frustrating. Great that you saved the penalty, but frustrating that somebody else got there to put the rebound in before you could clear it out. But hey, it's preseason. You learn from it. And then, they had the home game, road game, whatever you want to call it, against the U of M over at the Billy Murphy track and soccer complex. And the U of M men's team is right now, for them, peak of powers. They've never been this good for this long. Prior to Coach Mulrooney's arrival, I think they've been to the NCAA tournament twice ever. They've been each of the last 2 seasons now. They hosted SIU Edwardsville in an NCAA tournament game and drew over 1,000 people for it. They won an NCAA tournament game by beating SIU Edwardsville, who up to that point in the season had not lost a game. And that wasn't like 4 wins, 20 draws. No, it was like 16 wins and 3 draws and no loss. Like they were a top 25 team in the country. And I don't want to see the U of M jumped on them like 2-0 in the first 10 minutes. And I don't want to see jumped on the U of M again. Like the first 3 preseason games they played, they were on the score sheet early. And so as far as like the games, three draws and 1 win in the preseason. Having really been I only got to see 1 of the 4 preseason games, and I think most people were only going to be able to see a maximum of 2 since the Nashville game and the St. Louis City game were both behind closed doors and not being broadcast anywhere. So we don't really know how they looked. They looked good against Atlanta for 80 minutes until the superior preseason conditioning and extra 3 weeks of preseason conditioning took over for Atlanta. And then, they looked pretty good against the U of M. There was a little bit of stuff to clean up, which Coach Glass mentioned in the post game of that game. But again, it's preseason. All in all, you went unbeaten in preseason. Again, we are a new enough organization that is nothing to sneeze at. And it's better to win and draw than it is to lose them. So, especially with two of those being against MLS teams, which have traditionally been good MLS teams. Not only are they theoretically more talented and better coached, in theory, that's not necessarily always the case. And they've got an extra 2 or 3 weeks of preseason under their belt. So for 901 FC to be able to go on the road to both of those teams and get 1-1 draws and take the lead in both of those games, that's impressive. So now that the preseason is over, what's the home schedule look like? Well, 901 FC has been moved to the Western Conference for this season. Every year up until now, we've been in the Eastern Conference, but because the San Diego Loyal folded and Rio Grande Valley folded, and there are two new teams in the Eastern Conference, that's North Carolina FC and Rhode Island FC. Somebody had to get moved to the Western Conference, and if you're a Memphis Grizzlies fan or Nashville Predators fan, you know how frustrating this can be in terms of travel and road game start times. But for the most part, the home schedule, we're just going to talk about the home schedule because, we do get a trip to Birmingham, and we do, like, the two of the Eastern Conference road games that we do have are at Birmingham and at Louisville. So those are doable for Memphians. But a lot of the ones in the Western Conference, I don't think any of us are going to Sacramento or Monterey Bay or, Phoenix or El Paso or Albuquerque. But most of the home games, it looks like for the most part, they all start kind of right around the same time as they always did. Season opener is this Saturday, March the 9th, against the Las Vegas Lights. That's at 3 p.m. But then the following Saturday is another home game against Indy 11 at AutoZone Park. The kickoff time has yet to be determined for that one, so we'll just keep our eyes peeled, and as soon as I find out, as soon as I see when it is, I'd be more than happy to pass that along to y'all. But look, there's there's a couple of 3 p.m. start times early on. There's 7 p.m. start time. And then once you get into when the weather's warmer, there's a lot of 7:30 p.m. start times. The only crazy one is the Saturday, October 5th game against the Oakland Roots. It's the second to last home game of the year. That is a 9 p.m. kickoff at AutoZone Park. Like, what? That better be a national TV game, is all I'm saying. If you're trying to make the folks in California happy with a national TV time slot, 9 p.m. Woo! I mean, that means I'm getting out of AutoZone Park at like midnight, and I'm getting home at 12:30. I pray there's not a tournament at Mike Roast that weekend, because you probably won't be getting a post-game podcast that night if there is, because I'm not staying up till 2 o'clock in the morning and then getting up at 6:30 to go to Mike Rose. I'm sorry, that's not happening. But but most of these are fairly routine standard, 7:30, 7 p.m. There are a couple of 3 p.m.s, and just look for the game previews on Bluff City Media. Follow the team social, I guess, and that'll have all the accurate, up-to-date information on kickoff times for the home games. But they get Las Vegas and Indy at home. Tampa comes to town this year. Unfortunately, the scumbags from Detroit are not making a trip here. I don't know where my Detroit sticker went. There's been some changes in the household. I'm not sure if you can see in the background. And don't get me wrong, they've all been outstanding changes that really probably needed to happen. I'm not living the single guy life anymore, so change is inevitable. But the home schedule, not radically different except for just that one game. And I think we're going to close it out here tonight with a discussion of the jersey unveiling at the Medicine Factory building downtown tonight. If you had told me 6 months ago or a year ago that 901 FC was going to have a special event for the season ticket holders with the coaches and the players, and it was going to be packed and everybody was going to have good things to say, I would have said that you were a crazy person. But it's new 901 FC, baby. It's new 901 FC. I'm liking the new 901 FC because this jersey, I did not know this Medicine Factory building even existed, but it is apparently also the home of the new training jersey sponsor, DOSE, D-O-S-E, DOSE, however it's supposed to be said. That's who it is. They're the new yoga and Pilates and fitness class place of 901 FC, and they're the training jersey sponsor. The New Jersey sponsor, a couple of things. A, New Jersey, we're back to blue, baby. I like the blue. The black was okay, but it just didn't feel quite right. And now we're back to blue for 901 FC. We're back to being the boys in blue, which is fantastic. The jersey sponsor is fantastic. It's the it's the Cancer Kickers, right? So this is like a big deal for a lot of people. And they had some of the affected families that have, benefited from this organization at the jersey unveiling tonight. And there were not very many dry eyes in the room. And so I think that is a great sponsor for 901 FC to have on their jersey. That just speaks to the job that they're doing now, that they're able to get an organization of this caliber onto the jersey, which is back to a Blues jersey, which everybody likes. But it was a fantastic event. Got to see a lot of you out there. Got to schmooze and glad hand with the high rollers. But this type of event, this was one of the perks that was mentioned about being a season ticket holder. But again, we had a lot of media there. There was myself, there was Channel 3 and Channel 24 were there. Anthony Sane of our own Bluff City Media and the Anthony Sane Show here with Bluff City Media, he was there. So everything is going about as well as we could hope that it could go right now. That could all change when the season starts, or it could get better when the season starts. Either way, I am really, really, really excited for the season to be here. I think this is going to be a really, really good team this year. And the only thing that I could see creating problems would be as you get into the back half of the season and the travel. Normally, I kind of poo-poo the idea of travel being a lot, but with it being the Western Conference, I mean, if you're going to have to make 5, 6, 7 trips out to the West Coast, eventually that's going to take a toll on you. And it's not going to be done like an NHL or an NBA or a Major League Baseball West Coast swing where you're just out there for 3 weeks, which is its own different struggle, but it's not back and forth and back and forth and back and forth and back and forth. I remember in the 2016 Stanley Cup playoffs, the Nashville Predators had a pair of 7-game series. The first round, they went 7 games with the Anaheim Ducks, 4 games in LA. The second round was against the San Jose Sharks. And the Preds absolutely no-showed in Game 7 because you played 14 games against 2 teams on the West Coast, and you'd had essentially 8 flights out to the West Coast. That's going to take a toll on you, especially in a sport like hockey. I'll never forget that Game 7. Poor Pekka Rinne. It was a shooting gallery. I don't know that will happen. All I'm saying is I could see if something were to go wrong for 901 FC this year, I could see in the back half of the season the travel becoming an issue. Now, I don't have it mapped out exactly how long any given road trip is or how long they have to be from home or how many trips they're going to have to make. But, we'll cross that bridge when we get to it. But I think everything from a new COO to better marketing to a really good roster with quality guys who want to be here and want to win. You got a second-year coach who's got more time here under his belt and has got a roster of guys that it sounds like want to play for him when that wasn't necessarily the case last year. You've got more media coverage probably than you've had in 5 or 6 years. You've the momentum is unreal, it feels like. And I can't wait for the season to get here, guys. I'm so excited. It's like being a little kid and being excited for Christmas is what it feels like. Because we're only 3 days away now. So I think that's going to do it here tonight. We're kept it just about under an hour, so about 45 minutes. So that's good. Hope to see everybody down at AutoZone Park on Saturday. You can get your season tickets still. You can get single game tickets, group tickets, 4-packs, 8-packs, 16. Well, no, I guess there wouldn't be a 16-pack. That would just be season tickets. Those are 17 home games. Thanks, everybody, for tuning in. Really really enjoyed getting to see all of you either tonight at the jersey unveiling or at the U of M preseason game. It was good getting to talk to Coach Glass. It was nice to meet Coach Glass's wife. It's nice to talk to Coach Caleb, to Josh, to all those guys. I had a really good time, and I'm excited. It's going to be good. But I think that is going to do it for us here tonight. So thanks, everybody, for tuning in. Again, I'm your host, Lawrence Dockery. You can find me on Twitter at LDoc93. You can find the 901 Soccer Podcast on Twitter at 901 Soccer Pod. You can find Bluff City Media on Twitter at BluffCity_media. Find us over on Facebook as well. Search 901 Soccer. We'll pop right up. Search Bluff City Media. We'll pop right up. If there's anybody out there in listener land that is interested in sponsoring this show or is interested in sponsoring any of the other shows that we do here at Bluff City Media, we've got your Grizzlies, your Tiger basketball, your Tiger football, probably got Showboats coming up soon. But most importantly, this show, because this is the show that we're doing right now. If you are interested in sponsoring, please reach out to me. You can reach out to Bluff City Media. Any and all comers are welcome. And if you haven't, you should become a subscriber to the website, and that gets you into our special Discord where you get to talk to all of us and hear our deepest, innermost, important thoughts. So thanks, everybody, for tuning in, and we hope to see you out at AutoZone Park against Vegas on Saturday at 3.